Good afternoon, everyone. It is Saturday, January the 9th, 2021. It is almost 3 p.m. Central Time here in West Texas. My iPad is dead. That's it. My iPad is gone. And it didn't die because it stopped working. It died because the battery ran down to 0%, and it is finished. So I can't look at the time. I can't look anything up. I can't check anything. I can't verify anything. So that's dangerous. If you heard my broadcast yesterday where I introduced a historical study on the person of William Gurnall, who is the author of The Christian in Complete Armour. If you listen to that, you realize I had some major problems because in the background information on William Gurnall, it names the place where he was born, names some of the areas, and I looked at the word and how do I say that? Do I say that Norfolk? How do I say it? And so I just on the air looked it up. Now, at first it didn't bother me because I'm like, you know what? Who cares? I want to make sure I say the word right. I'll look it up. You know, why should I be embarrassed by that? But then I felt, you know what, if I'm sitting there looking it up live on the air, people are going to so focus on the fact that I did not speak the name. I didn't pronounce the name of the city he was born correctly. And then I messed up another area incorrectly. And then I said another word incorrectly. And basically I ended up looking up 3 words that it comes across like, well, if he can't get that right, then he can't get anything else right. So, and I understand that. And if I would have been recording that, then I would have just stopped recording, deleted the recording and start over, but I was live on the air. So I left it there. Now, and you can tell me whatever you think about that. I mean, I know it's embarrassing. I know it's foolish. And it bothers me because I want people to really get the history that I gave you about William Gurnall, again, the author of the book, The Christian in Complete Armour, the book we're getting ready to start talking about. I wanted you to really get that history because I thought it was significant and gives you kind of an understanding, a historical context in which to understand the book. And a lot of times people overlook the historical context. And I think that historical context really makes the book a little bit more powerful, especially the perspective it offers. Okay, so I don't have the iPad today. So if I run into a problem now, I can't look anything up. I can't verify anything. So I'm a little worried, but hopefully this will be beneficial. But in a roundabout way, even though it bothers me, it probably bothers me more from my own ego and pride. On another way, it doesn't bother me because that's really what I've tried to make this whole podcast about. It's just real, just being very real, right? It's not being about polished and edited where I come across as so perfect and smart. I really want the idea that, hey, I'm a sinner. I'm a failure. I'm messed up. And I'm trying to live this Christian life out the best I can. And I invite you to be a part of my journey and you journey along with me. And we learn together. We do Bible study together, theology together. We work through books together. We talk about what's happening in the world together. And we try to figure it out together. And when it's not perfect the way that one wasn't, it really, I think, captures what this podcast is really about. It's trying to be real. I can edit the thing to death. I mean, I can go cut things out, redo it. I can try to make it so perfect, but I think you can edit it to such a point that it really stops being you and it becomes kind of a polished version of you. And I'll use the idea. I use this in another study. It almost become the fig leaf version of us. We cover ourselves up to hide all of our flaws and failures and shortcomings. And, I sometimes get the names of places and people horribly wrong, and I say words sometimes horribly wrong. Is that acceptable? It's not acceptable in being professional and trying to get the message across, and I need to always get better at that, and I'm very aware of that. And trust me, I'm more aware of it than you are. It bothers me more than it probably bothers you. So I'm a little nervous that I don't have the ability to check anything today. So we can't detour at all. What I have in front of me is what we have in front of us. So here's what we're going to do. I'm not going to say this is going to begin a long and lengthy journey through the book, The Christian and Complete Armor. I'm going to say this is going to begin what will be probably a series of messages where I look at certain aspects of the book. Unless the response is overwhelming, I'm not going to try to take us word by word, page by page through. I mean, it's a gigantic 3 volumes is really what the Christian and Complete Armor is. You know, like right now looking at my Kindle, hang on, it tells me, it would be bad if my battery on my Kindle was about to go. It tells me that I have 34 hours and 55 minutes left in the book, okay? Or 35 hours left in the book. If I start trying to work through this, it's going to take forever. Now, I got no problem taking it forever. I mean, only thing I'm waiting for is ultimately, death and heaven. Okay. So, I mean, there's always something that we can talk about, but it's would become a long series. And I've already got other series I'm trying to complete. And I don't know if anyone really wants to work through the book in such a detailed manner. So what I may do is just read, and when I find certain parts, and I just may take random things from the Christian and Complete Armor and just say, hey, today we're going to talk about this. Hey, today we're going to talk about this. Maybe they'll be in order. Maybe I'll just jump from chapter to chapter, volume to volume, and just try to find the things that I think are important. Just as kind of some devotional messages from the Christian and Complete Armor. I think that's what we're going to try to do. Now, one of the things we have to get out of the way is the spelling difference. All right. If you look up the word armor in a dictionary, or if you look up the word, if you come across the word armor and say the NIV, it is spelled ARMOR. All right. In fact, let me lean over here. I've got right here the NIV. Okay. The passage in Ephesians chapter 6. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God. ARMOR. ARMOR. If you see the cover of the book, The Christian and Complete Armor, you will know that it is spelled ARMOUR. ARMOUR. So I was thinking when I put the title here, The Christian and Complete Armor, which spelling do I go with? If I go with the one on the book, The Christian and Complete Armor, ARMOUR, and people are searching, I doubt they're going to spell armor in that way. That ARMOUR comes from, and you'll notice here, if you read, if you have the King James open, the King James Bible open, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 11, put on the whole armor, ARMOUR of God. I'm assuming that's an Old English spelling of the word ARMOUR, and the more modern spelling is ARMOR. All right, so in the title, I went ARMOR. In the description, I went ARMOUR. And the cover has ARMOUR. And that's the cover artwork I used for this episode, was the cover of the book with that spelling. So I know there's a difference there. I just want you to know that I'm aware of that, because you may go, wait, you spelled it this way in the title, but then in the description, you spelled it a different way. Yeah, because I don't know which one to go with. I don't know which one. It's like, flip a coin. Okay, let's go with that one. So, but the main thing is the book is called The Christian and Complete Armor. And that is what we are going to look at the introduction of in this episode. All right. Is it going to be done perfectly? Probably not. But hey, the imperfections is kind of, that's what it's all about. All right. So here we go. I'm dropping things off the table. I'm dropping pencils. Okay. I can't look up anything on my iPad. That's my security blanket. What am I going to do? All right, here we go. No, but let's do this. And I think this is very important. When you see a book entitled The Christian in Complete Armor, you pretty much are going to have this idea that it's going to be talking about spiritual warfare. And I think that is a good place to start. When you think of spiritual warfare, right? When you think of spiritual warfare, what comes to your mind? What image do you have of spiritual warfare? What does it look like? What does it entail? And I think this is important because I think a lot of times when pastors talk about spiritual warfare, I think that there may be an assumption that we're all kind of thinking the same thing and that we're all thinking that it looks the same way and that it works a certain way. But I don't believe, I not only do I not believe, I can guarantee you it's not the case. You get 10 Christians in the room talking about spiritual warfare, you're going to get 50 different ideas. And they range from things that kind of make sense to things that you're like, whoa, where did you get that? Well, we're in spiritual warfare. Put on your armor. Come on, this is the way you do it. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. We're talking different languages. And I think a lot of things influence your understanding of spiritual warfare. For example, depending on your age, you may have been greatly influenced by the book, I think, was it called This Present Darkness? I can't look it up. See, I can't look it up. This Present Darkness, was it Frank Peretti? I think was the name of the author. I think it was This Present Darkness. Piercing the Darkness. Was there 2 books, 3 books? I don't remember how many books was in the series. And a lot of people's perspective, look, whether you like it or not, a lot of people's perspective of spiritual warfare was greatly influenced by that book because those books were popular and influential. Was that the 80s? That was the 80s. Yeah, I think the 80s is when the first one came out. That one had a major influence on what I thought spiritual warfare was. What is this all about? And then other books influenced me and trying to figure it out. So if you have a certain, here's what we need to do. Whatever idea you have of spiritual warfare in your mind, you just need to throw it out. All right. And I've stated this in previous studies, and I'm going to state it again. Whatever understanding you had yesterday is really of no value today when it comes to studying the Bible. Had to sneeze there. I apologize. No, I don't have COVID, but I just had to sneeze. All right. So, all right. Let me state this again. Your previous understanding of anything Bible related is of no value today. And I know when I say that, people are like, what are you talking about? Look, we're all fallible people. And when we study the Bible, we are fallible. So whatever our understanding we had yesterday, we can't rely on it today because it could have been wrong. It could have been completely misguided, misdirected, and completely messed up. So the only way to grow, the only way to fix past understanding is to throw away past understanding when you engage in a present study. So, and I know people think that's crazy, but really, I always say it this way. My past understanding can lead to present blindness because I can just rely so heavily on the past understanding that clouds the way I see what I'm studying currently. And I got to throw that away. So whatever you think about spiritual warfare, whatever you think you're so sure about, just throw it all out. And if you are going to engage in reading the Christian and Complete Armor, then you look at its perspective on spiritual warfare, and then you can then figure out if you agree with it, disagree with it, and struggle with it. And then whenever you study the subject in the future, you forget everything you learned about in the Christian Complete Armor, and you look at the subject anew, because you have to constantly do that, or you'll start everything you studied in the past will shade and cloud the way you see it in the present. And what if you were wrong in the past? That you can't do that. So I think we all have a certain idea of what spiritual warfare is, how it works, what it looks like, what it involves. I think a lot of people have all kinds of ideas about the spiritual armor, what it means to put it on, what does that look like, how does it work? And I think we have to constantly be challenged because, it's a high probability that a lot of our understanding is incorrect. And we always have to be, looking at it again. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the introduction to The Christian and Complete Armor by William Gurnall. And we're going to do our best to see what this has to say. Now, just a reminder of the historical context. William Gurnall, as a pastor, rector, curator, basically as a pastor, while he was a pastor, crazy things happened. Crazy things happened in England. And you can go back and listen to my study on William Gurnall. I went through all of the details of everything that happened. And there was a lot of political turmoil, a lot of political upheaval. There was all this going on. And what he decided to do in the midst of all of this, he didn't get involved in politics. He didn't go after it from a political standpoint. He wanted to talk to them about spiritual warfare. and truly try to understand that. And so that, I think, and looking at all the upheaval going on in our world, to get our mind focused back on spiritual warfare is, I think, a good idea. And again, whatever you think that spiritual warfare is, just set it aside. I was going to list just a lot of different ways people look at it, but I'm not going to do that right now, right? Because I just want to get into the introduction of the book. But just set it aside. Set it aside, okay? There's people who think spiritual warfare means fighting what's happening in the culture politically and getting certain people in political office, and they will say that they're fighting a spiritual war. And you're like, I don't think that's spiritual warfare. I think that's fighting, and even if you believe you're engaging in spiritual warfare, you're using the fleshly means to try to accomplish victory. You're trying to do politics. That, I reject that. But again, I'm going to set aside all of my ideas as well, and we're going to just see where William Gurnall and the Christian Complete Armour at least starts off in its introduction. That's where we're going to try to go with this, all right? Does that make sense? All right, here we go. This is this is the way it shows up in my Kindle. A treatise of the whole armor of God, introduction, and it begins with Ephesians 6:10. Ephesians 6:10, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Ephesians 6:10. I'll probably put Ephesians 6:10 in the Bible memory app. I probably will put it in the Bible memory app so that we can memorize that. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. If you need information about the Bible memory app, email me, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Also, if you're looking for a copy of the Christian and Complete Armor, you can get it for cheap on your Kindle. We have it listed as a suggested book in the Theology Central Book Club. If you need help finding the Theology Central Book Club, it's very easy. Go to theologycentral.net, go to the blog section, find the blog post for the Theology Central Book Club, click on the link, join the club. You'll see the suggested book. You can click on the book and purchase a copy. We don't get any money. We don't make any money. It's not a ploy for us to make some money. Just making another easy way for you to find the book and to be a part of the book club so that you can always see what books I'm suggesting. All right, there you go. All right, so finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. This is how he begins his introduction. I think this is brilliant, and I think this introduction is more needed now than maybe at any time, especially for the American church. Here we go. Paul was now in bonds. Paul was in prison. Now, it is very important. This is where he wants to start off. He wants to start off by showing that the Apostle Paul, who wrote Ephesians 6:10, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. He wants us to understand the context behind that. This man who wrote those words was in prison. Okay, now, if he's in prison, okay, then, in fact, let me look at something here. I'm going to verify this. I don't have my iPad. But sometimes if I say something, I'm always like, well, wait a minute, let's make sure that that's 100% correct, right? And I didn't think about this until right now. When I read those words, all of a sudden they hit me a little different. So I want to make sure that I don't forget anything. All right. Yeah. Okay. Ephesians, one of the 4 shorter epistles written by the Apostle Paul while he was in prison. All right. I just wanted to make sure that was 100% correct. You say, well, didn't you know that? I knew that before, but I don't want to rely on my old. So I just wanted to make sure I looked it up. So I looked up in a Bible dictionary just to go, and it confirms it. He's saying the same thing. So I just want to make sure that we do that. And so sometimes people like, you do things so weird. No, I just want to make sure that we have the facts, right? Truth, right? I don't want to rely on just because I was taught that's where he was. I want to remind myself if that is accurate. So Paul was in prison. I want to make sure we get this. He was in prison when he wrote, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Now, listen carefully. This is so good. Paul was now in bonds, yet not so close kept as to be denied pen and paper. God, it seems, gave him some favor in the sight of his enemies. So even though he's in prison, things worked out. Obviously, we believe in the sovereignty of God. God worked things out that he would have pen and paper. Paul was Nero's prisoner, but Nero was much more God's. That's a powerful perspective. Let me read that again. Paul was Nero's prisoner, but Nero was much more God's. Hey, Paul may be a Nero's prisoner, but Nero was ultimately God's prisoner because God was the one who was ultimately in charge. Let's continue. And while God had worked for Paul, he found him friends both in court and in prison. God had work for Paul to do. All right. And so he was going to create the situation, fix the situation, which is just like, this is the bizarre thing about the sovereignty of God. Well, why didn't he just get him out of prison? Why didn't he just let him out of prison? Right? I mean, that's the question I would have, but God clearly doesn't work the way that we always want it to work. But God worked in a way that God's purpose would be accomplished. God's will would be accomplished, not necessarily Paul's will or our will. That's always like we say God is sovereign, and we always want that sovereignty to work according to our will. We always have to realize when we say God's sovereign, that means he does what he wants, his way, his purpose, not ours. We love God's sovereignty when it works for us. We don't like God's sovereignty when it seems to work against us. But we've got to be willing to take the good and the bad. God gives and God takes away. Praise be the Lord. We have to trust in his sovereignty. So God had work for Paul, and he found him friends in both court and prison. Let persecutors send the saints to prison. God can provide a keeper for their turn. But how doth this great apostle spend his time in prison? Now, this is very important, all right? How does Paul spend his time while sitting in prison? What is his focus? What is he attempting to do? Listen, not in publishing invectives against those, though the worst of men. Okay, he didn't start out by trying to write invectives. In other words, accusations and complaints and condemnations against those, though the worst of men. These people were some of the worst people, but Paul didn't spend his time going, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to publish one bad letter after another. I'm going to criticize them, complain about them, condemn them, tell everyone how bad they are. Paul didn't do that. That would be what would be inside of me and be inside of you. Oh, I'm in prison. This is not just. This is not right. I'm going to write one condemning message after another. Paul doesn't do that. Why? Okay, now listen. So not in publishing, condemning messages against those, though they're the worst of men, who had laid him in a piece of zeal which the holy sufferers of those times were little acquainted with, nor in political councils, how he might wind himself out of this trouble. Now stop right here. In other words, what he didn't do, he didn't spend his time complaining and arguing about where he was, and he didn't spend his time worried about political councils and how he might, they put the word wind, but basically, win himself out of this trouble or find himself out of this trouble, how he could escape this trouble. He didn't do that. That's what we would do. That's what Christians always do. When things don't go our way, we're being persecuted, and we got to take a stand for our rights. And what are we going to do? And let's fight about this. And we got to fight about, and let's condemn this political party. And wait. Let's see if this political party will be the people who can get us out of trouble. Who can help us. We're always looking for political allies, and we always want to condemn this side and condemn this side. Paul doesn't do that. All right. And I think there's a powerful lesson here. He also didn't win himself out of this trouble by flattery, by sordid flattery. He didn't, I'm going to try to flatter the right people and find the right, try to get the right friends in high places. Or he didn't also try to win himself out of trouble by sinful compliance with the great ones of the time. He didn't also just go along with what they told him to do. He didn't do that as well. This is what William Gurnall writes. Some would have used any picklock to have opened a passage to their liberty and not scrupled. So escape they might, whether they got out at the door or window. But this holy man was not so fond of liberty or life as to purchase them at the least hazard to the gospel. He wasn't going to sit there and spend the time arguing and fighting and calling for this or try. In other words, he wasn't spending all of his time trying to get out of prison. He wasn't spending all of his time to find a way to pick the lock. He wasn't going to do anything, and he wasn't going to do anything that would be a hazard to the gospel. He was worried about the gospel. He was worried about Scripture. He was worried about that, not his liberty. We're more worried about our liberty and our rights above all else. That's all it seems Christianity sometimes can focus on. He knew too much of another world. He knew too much of another world to be preoccupied with what was happening to him in this world. He knew too much of another world. Do we truly know too much of another world? The book reads this way. He knew too much of another world to bid so high for the enjoying of this. He knew too much of another world to bid so high, to work, to do what he can for enjoying this world. He wasn't worried about enjoying this world. He was worried ultimately about the next world. And therefore, he is fearless. He is fearless of what his enemies can do with him. He's not afraid of what they can do to him because he again knows too much of another world. Well knowing he was sure of going to heaven. He knew he was going to heaven. So whatever happens here can't compare ultimately to that. All right. Well knowing he was sure of going to heaven, whether they would or not. All right. So well knowing he was sure of going to heaven, whether they would or not, whether the other people were going to heaven or not, that was irrelevant. He knew he was going to heaven. No. So he didn't do any of those things. No. The great care which lay upon him was for the churches of Christ as a faithful steward. He labored to see this house of God in order before his departure. What he was worried about wasn't his rights, wasn't about politics, wasn't about getting these men condemned and exposed. And no. What he was worried about was the church of God and having it set in order before his time was up. We need to be worried about the church of God. We need to be worried about spiritual matters. And we don't need to always be worried about our rights and our liberty and everything else and political affiliation and political allies and all of the other things that the church sometimes becomes preoccupied with. All right? William Gurnall continues in the introduction to the Christian and Complete Armor. We read of no dispatch sent to court to procure his liberty. He didn't write to any of the courts. He's like, I'm going to take this to the Supreme Court. No, he didn't do that. All right. But he wrote, we do read of dispatches to many of the churches to help them stand fast in the liberty wherewith Christ had made them free. He didn't worry about an earthly liberty. He wanted the churches to stand fast in the liberty that they had in Christ Jesus. That's what he wanted to worry about. Spiritual liberty, not his physical liberty. He was more worried about the spiritual condition of others than his own rights and liberty and that thing. It's like a complete it's like a complete opposite of what we see in the American church today. It's about us. Our rights. The whole COVID situation, all the churches want to do is fight about closures, no closures, masks, no masks, social distancing, fight. And nobody seems to be worried about the spiritual condition of people. What can we do? Paul didn't worry about what he couldn't do. He focused on what he could do. And what he could do was right. That's what he could do. What we can do is preach. What we can do is teach. And we can do that no matter what the situation. There is no such way, and listen carefully to this, again, from the introduction to the Christian Complete Armor. There is no such way to be even with the devil and his instruments, for all their spite against us, as by doing what good we can wherever we are. Let me read this again. There is no such way to be even with the devil and his instruments, for all their spite against us, as by doing what good we can wherever we are. The one thing we can do is just do the good we can wherever we are. That's what we can do. That's the best way to stand against the devil. That's the best way to fight against it. It's just do the good that we can wherever we are, whatever the conditions are. Just focus on doing what we can do. Instead of fighting about, look, he could sit there and he could have been, you know what? This is wrong. I was in prison for preaching. This is not fair. This is persecution. What about my rights? What about my liberty? You know what he said? Oh, wait, I can't fix that. Out of my control. You know what instead of wasting my time trying to fix that, I know what I can do. I can do good. I can preach. I can teach. I can encourage. I can disciple. And that's what he did. The devil had as good have let Paul alone, for he no sooner comes into prison, but he falls a preaching, at which the gates of Satan's prisons fly open and poor sinners come forth. So what he is saying, it would have been better for the devil just to leave Paul alone, because as soon as Paul gets put in prison, well, guess what? He starts preaching and the gates of Satan's prison flies open and sinners come forth. So in other words, you put Paul in prison, but all it did was lead him to preach so that sinners could be set free from the bondage of Satan. Pretty powerful idea. He says, happy for Onesimus that Paul was sent to Gaul. God had an errand for Paul to do with him and others, which the devil never dreamed of. Nay, he did not only preach in prison, but that he may do the devil all the mischief he can. He sends his epistles to the churches, that tasting his spirit in his affliction and reading his faith, now ready to be offered up, they might much more be conformed, amongst which Ephesus was not at least in his thoughts, as you may perceive by his abode with them 2 years together, Acts chapter 19, verse 10. In other words, you put him in prison, but guess what he did? He sends epistles to the churches, and that tasting his spirit in affliction and being ready in his faith to be offered up, they might much be conformed. In other words, he was going to get them in the same, he was trying to get them in the same mindset, with the same spirit, being ready to be offered up and ready to press on and ready to fight. So he wasn't going to allow his circumstances to discourage him from doing what is right. And you can't do that. This is very important. We can't allow our circumstances to discourage us. We can see all the mess around us. We can see all the brokenness around us. And I'm preaching this to myself, and we can get discouraged. But no, Paul was in prison. You know what? I'm going to send this out. I'm going to send this epistle to the churches, and I'm going to try to show them, by the way I'm handling my circumstances, that this is the attitude and spirit they need to have as well. Right? He continues. Okay, it says, and then it talks about that the people in Ephesus was obviously in his thoughts because he abode with them 2 years together, Acts chapter 19, verse 10. He also, by sending forth elders of the church as far as Miletus, in his last journey to Jerusalem, Acts 20:17, to take his farewell of them, as never to see their face in the world more. And surely the sad impression which that heartbreaking departure left upon the spirits of those elders, yea, the whole church, by them acquainted with this mournful news, might stir up Paul, now in prison, to write unto this church, that having so much of his spirit, yea, of the spirit of the gospel, left in their hands to converse with, they might more patiently take the news of his death. In other words, he was afraid that because of all of his time he spent with them and all of his efforts towards them, they find out he's in prison, find out he's going to die, that they might get upset, get discouraged, and he wants them to more patiently take the news of his death, that they handle it the correct way. He's ultimately worried about how his circumstances could impact them. He's worried about how circumstances could discourage them, get them focused on the wrong thing, pursuing the wrong thing. And we need to be reminded over and over that all the circumstances that we see and come in contact with, we've got to stay focused on the right thing. All right, now, he continues. In the former part of this epistle, he soars high in the mysteries of the faith. And the latter, according to his usual method, he descends to application, where we find him contracting all of those truths as beams together in a powerful exhortation, the more to enkindle their hearts and powerfully persuade them to walk worthy of their vocation. Chapter 4, verse 1, which then is done when the Christian's life is so far transparent that the grace of the gospel shines forth and the power of holiness on every side, and from all his relations as a candle in a crystal glass, not in a dark lanthorn. lightsome one way and dark another, and therefore he runs over the several relations of husbands, wives, parents, children, masters, servants, and passeth the same in all of these. Okay, let me try to summarize all of that. Paul has a typical way of writing. The first part is doctrinal, theological, and it lays down the fundamental theological truths. And then in the second part, he expounds the practical applications. Here's the truth. Now, based off this truth, here's the application of it. And he says Paul does the exact same thing, and he builds this, and what he wants them to see, that the Christian life is so far transparent that the grace of the gospel shines forth, that, hey, that based off the truth of Christianity and the base of the truth I've given you, now it should shine forth in the power of holiness on every side and from all his relations as a candle in a crystal glass. That's how it should demonstrate itself. And so he runs over the several relations, husbands, wives, parents, children, masters, and servants. And he passeth the same in all of these. Now that doctrinal truth needs to show up in all of these personal relationships. Okay. Now, having set everyone in his proper place about his particular duty, as a wise general, after he hath arranged his army and drawn them forth into rank and file, he makes this following speech at the head of the Ephesian camp, all in martial phrase, as best suiting the Christian's calling, which is a continued warfare with the world and the prince of the world. All right, so here's what he does. He, in a sense, sets them all in order. Here's how you should be living out your Christian life based off this doctrine. Here's how it should work as husbands, wives, parents, children, masters, servants. He's got them all laid out. He's got them all ready. It's like a general getting the army all ready. And now that they're all ready, they're now all properly, organized. They're all properly arranged. And this is what he does. He tells them the best suiting, that what suits the Christian calling, that's the best suiting for the Christian calling is this, is a continued warfare with the world and the prince of the world. That is what we are called to do, a continued warfare with the world and the prince of the world. We're fighting against the world, we're fighting against the devil. And obviously we're fighting against the flesh, the world, and the devil. But he names two here, the world and Satan. Now, I don't know if he's going to get into a discussion about the flesh, but here, this is what he's going to, I don't remember everything through the books. I've read the books, but I don't remember everything. I don't want to say something that will prove to be true, false later. So right now, he's focusing on two parts, the world and the devil. And he says the speech contains two parts. First, here's how he's going to break down this speech Paul's going to give them. A short but sweet and powerful encouragement. First, he's going to try to give them an encouragement. That's in verse 10, right? So let's look at Ephesians 6:10. Again, Ephesians 6:10. 6:10. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. That, I'm assuming, is the sweet, powerful encouragement, right? That's the encouragement he has for everyone. Be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. He wants to encourage them. Be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. That's where you're going to find your strength. All right. Now remember, Paul's in prison, but he's not worried about them. Hey, go get someone elected and take this to court. It's nothing about any of that. Hey guys, this is what I need you to do. All right. Here's some doctrine. Now, once you get this doctrine, here's how you live it out. And now here's what you need to do. You got to be prepared to fight a battle. And I want to encourage you to be strong. Power of God. And well, let me read it. Don't want to misquote it. Be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. That's the first part of the speech. Second, the other part is spent in several directions for their managing this world the more successfully, with some motives here and there sprinkled among them. All right. So here's what he wants to do. So first, he gives them encouragement, and second, he's going to give them, how does he words this? Directions and managing the war. That's the way I'm going to summarize it. Directions and managing the war. Encouragement and directions. Let's do it that way. Encouragement and directions. Hey, here's the encouragement. Now here are the directions. Right? he says, to begin with, the first. The word of encouragement to battle. Here's the word of encouragement to battle. With this, he begins his speech. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord. The best way indeed to prepare them for the following directions. Right? So the best way indeed to prepare them for the following directions. A soul deeply possessed with fear and dispirited with strong impressions of danger is in no posture for counsel. And we see in an army when put to flight by some sudden alarm or apprehension of danger, it is hard rallying them in order till the fright occasioned thereby is over. Therefore, the apostle first raises up their spirits. Be strong in the Lord, as if he should say, perhaps some drooping souls find their hearts fail them, while they see their enemies so strong and they so weak and so numerous and they so few, so well appointed and they so naked and unarmed, so skillful and expert at arms, but they green and raw soldiers. Let not those or any other thoughts dismay you, but with undaunted courage march on and be strong in the Lord, on whose performance lies the stress of the battle and not on your skill or strength. Now stop right here. What he realizes is, hey, if this army is overcome with anxiety and worry and discouragement and depression, not only about, where he's in prison, so they may think it's over. We're all going to get killed. We're all going to go to prison. We're all losing our rights. What are we going to do? They may get discouraged. Also, they may be encouraged to fight in a wrong way. He gives them the example how to fight because he doesn't ask them to fight politically or anything like that. But he wants to encourage them. He realizes they've got to be encouraged. They've got to realize this because they're going to see the power of the enemy and they're going to be discouraged. And if they're discouraged, then they're not going to fight. They're going to retreat. They're going to be afraid, or they may be tempted to fight in a wrong way. So he encourages them, all right? And so he reminds them, hey, it's God's power. It's not your power. You're not relying. This battle is not going to be determined by your skill and your ability. It's going to be determined by God. Right? So don't be dismayed. Don't be undaunted, but with undaunted courage, march on. Be undaunted is how I should have stated that. March on with courage. Be strong in the Lord, on whose performance lies the stress of the battle, not on your skill or strength. It's not on our skill or strength. We're not going to win spiritual battles by skill and strength. We've got to rely on God. It is not the least of a minister's care and skill in dividing the word, so to press the Christian's duty as not to oppress his spirit with the weight of it, but by laying it on the creature's own shoulders and not on the Lord's strength, as here our apostle teaches us. So he says it's not the least of a minister's care and skill in dividing the word of God, that we don't want to press Christian duty as to oppress the spirit with the weight of it. We don't want to do that. We don't want to as preaching, weigh someone down that they don't want to do anything. But we want to lay it by doing this, by laying it on the creature's own shoulders. But we want to do it. We need to realize that they need the Lord's strength. In other words, we want to remind the people it's God's strength you need. It's not just, hey, do this, do this, do this. We need to give them the proper understanding of you got to rely on God's strength. All right. And this verse first here is a familiar, let's see here. How does he state this? Give me a second here. Give me a second. I'm trying to look up the definition of a word here. Give me 1 second if my Kindle will cooperate with me. Maybe. There we go. How does he use this? It is, okay. All right. So it seems like what he wants to do. Okay. In the first verse, here is a familiar title or a familiar name given to Christians, right? So the first thing he does, he uses a kind of a familiar title, a familiar name, and it's my brethren, my brethren. All right, so that's the first thing he does. The first thing he's going to give them is this familiar title, my brethren. Second, he's going to give them a strong exhortation, be strong. Third, here is a cautionary direction annexed to the exhortation, in the Lord. Fourth, here's an encouraging amplification of the direction, and in the power of his might, or in his mighty power. So let's see how he breaks this down. All right, so in the first verse, Ephesians 6:10, let me read it to you. Ephesians 6:10, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Now, he's going to break this down in a very Puritan-esque way. It's how the Puritans really break the verses down. And now sometimes you can say they break them down almost to like too much, but this is how he's going to break it down. Here's what he says. First, there's the familiar title or name given. And what is that? My brethren, right? Second, here is the strong exhortation, right? My brethren, be strong. There's the exhortation. You need to be strong right now, all right? Third, here is a cautionary direction that comes from the exhortation in the Lord. And he calls it a cautionary direction because we are tempted to be strong in so many different ways. We tend to want to be strong politically, physically, mentally. We look for all these other ways to be strong. And he's cautioning them, don't look to be strong in any other way except in the Lord, right? And then here is the encouraging amplification. He amplifies this by telling them that it's the power of his might or in his mighty power. In other words, what he wants you to do. Here's the cautionary direction in the Lord, but he's going to amplify this, almost amplifying this. He's amplifying the cautionary direction, but he's amplifying this almost as an encouragement. So it's an encouraging amplification because he wants them to know, be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. You're going to be strong in the Lord because God is powerful. He is mighty. You can be strong. It's not just like be strong in God, but he's amplifying it that you're being strong in the God that is powerful and mighty. So there is encouragement in that. So let's break it down that way one more time. All right. In this verse, here is a familiar title, my brethren. Second, there's an exhortation, be strong. Third, there's a cautionary direction in the Lord. And then fourth, there's an encouraging amplification of the direction and the power of his might, or in his mighty power. All right, now, that's the end of the introduction. In the introduction, he gave us some background. He gave us a breakdown of Ephesians 6:10. Here's what I want to take from this, all right? Here's what I want to just really drive home. We as Christians, we lose our focus so easily. We see the messed up world, and we start trying to figure out what we're going to do, right? Sometimes what we do is we focus on ourselves. That's what we do. We focus on ourselves. Look at us. Look at how we're being treated. We're going to lose our religious liberty. They're coming after us. Us. And what are we going to do? We're going to fight. And how are we going to fight? We're going to fight politically. Let's get this person elected, and let's do this. And we're going to save the country. That's all from a fleshly, earthly perspective. No matter what is happening around us or to us, we use whatever opportunities we have to encourage spiritual focus and spiritual battle. No matter what is happening around us or to us, we do not allow it to distract us from our goal. That is scriptural perspective on battle, fighting a spiritual warfare, a spiritual mindset. That's what we need. And we need that. And sometimes we get very discouraged when we see what happens. Look, here's what I think happens. What happens around us and to us does two things. It distracts us, and it discourages us. The distraction, the way we overcome that distraction is reminded, nope, it's not about me. It's not about my right. It's getting our eyes off ourselves and realizing I've got to look at this world from a spiritual perspective, and I have a spiritual war to fight. We cannot be distracted from that. So we're not distracted, because that distraction, we become distracted by finding other solutions. The way we overcome distraction is with spiritual focus. It's not about me. Get my eyes off self and get my eyes in the scripture. Okay. Second, we can become very discouraged. We can become very discouraged. And how do we overcome that discouragement? To realize that the battle is to be fought in the power and the might of God. We got to be strong in the Lord. It's not our power. It's not our ability. It's God. We've got to turn our focus there. This is a message so needed for the American church. We have become distracted. Many have become discouraged. I've become discouraged by the condition of the church. I mean, at times I just want to give up and say, forget this. And some of you have emailed me with expressing very much the same frustration. You know what? We can't become distracted or discouraged. We got to be strong in the power and might of God. Doesn't matter what happens to the church. Doesn't matter if the whole church is in a sense burning down and becoming apostate. Be strong in the power and the might of God. We got a spiritual war to fight. And there's the introduction to the Christian in Complete Armour by William Gurnall. There you go. I hope that was helpful. I didn't mess up too much, did I? Yeah, probably. Okay. There was a word there he uses there for that first part of the way he breaks that down. I don't even know what it is, but that's why I looked up and go, okay, I think I know what the definition is here. And I looked up the definition. Yeah, and it's basically a word that means name or title. The name or title he gives there. Yeah, that's the first thing. And the name is my brethren. My brethren. Now, I could give you a Bible study exercise, but I won't do that right there. Okay. I look forward to hearing from you. newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. I'm going to go home. I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow. We'll see what happens. God's in control. We'll see what happens. I look forward to hearing from you. Everyone have a great night, great day, great weekend. God bless.